Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be installing the Racecapture data logger in the WRX. Yeah, you're right. The car already has one, but we're selling the Cayman, and there's a different version of a Racecapture data logger in that car, and I figured we could use it in this car. Previously, the data logger, which is much smaller, sat underneath this seat. But the seat's changed and access to the data logger is a lot more difficult. Plus the new one that we're using is bigger and has a couple additional features, and so I want to be able to see it easily. And so I've already started taking the trim apart, and specifically we're shooting for the little cubby that's in front of the shifter. And so I've already got some work done on it, and let me go ahead and show you what we've managed to kind of accomplish so far. Okay, so I guess we can take the opportunity to kind of just give you a rundown on the difference between the two data loggers that we're using. This was what I was previously using in the WRX. This is a Racecapture Track Mark II, or version 2, I think. Maybe it's version 3. In any case, this has 2 CAN networks, a boatload of CAN mapping, GPS, accelerometer, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, but it has no analog input, right? So if you've got senders that you want to connect to the data logger, the only way to do that is through an analog X, which utilizes one of the 2 CAN networks on this data logger so that you can pull in an analog signal. And for every analog X, you can pull in 4 analog signals. This is a Pro, and so you can see it's much larger. Oh, I should say, okay, so it has a memory card on it. With the Track, the only way to record the data is to a connected device. Now, this could be connected via the USB port, Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth, but the device that is connected will do the data logging itself and save the file. The Pro lets you save it to an SD card. It has an action button that you can program to do all sorts of different things. But on the back is one of the main differences. It has multiple input outputs, right? So the Pro has the ability to connect 7 analog sensors right out of the box, and you can expand that again with an analog X if you so desire. It has additional inputs for RPM, and then 3 GPIOs. You can use those GPIOs to trigger relays. Really common use might be for a fan or a pump, in the case that you have some type of sender that's reading a parameter, and when you start to overheat or something like that, it just automatically triggers a relay and turns on a fan for you. So what I've done here is, you can see I've used a wooden block to act as a riser to bring the Pro a little more flush and on the same height as this trim here. And I'm thinking about maybe sticking a piece of Velcro underneath. I'm not too sure. It seems pretty solid. For the most part, this is done. All I really need to do is wire everything up. And so let me pull the connector out here and kind of show you what's going on. Okay, so the Pro uses, I guess you'd call this like an ATX connector. You find these on motherboards. This is like the main connector that powers the computer's motherboard. And Racecapture or Autosport labs, they give you a bunch of wires that are all color-coded. And if you follow the manual, the color codes tell you which position to plug the pins into. I don't use all of them, which is why I still have a baggie full of wires. But in this case, I'm going to be the WRX has 2 sensors, so I'll be adding an additional wire here. And then we're using 2 CAN networks, so I'll have to add 2 more wires over here. But otherwise, this will be the connector. And the goal is to actually run it through this hole. So plug it in here, run it through the hole, and then run it down the center of the car. We're using posi taps. I'm a big fan of posi taps because I hate soldering, and so far I've used these for the last 5 years on 2 different cars and have never had a problem. I don't think we're going to use the blue ones. I think we're going to actually change to the red ones here. We've got to kind of test and make sure. These ones are T-taps, so as you can see, they tee off the wire. I think these are T's as well. And then you can also buy them where they're in line, and they run in line with the wire. I'm thinking for these ones, the inline one might be better, but I don't think I have that many of them. I think I only have one. Since I only have the T's, that's what I'm going to end up using. Yeah, so let me take a peek at the wiring that we got in the car and see what we need to do here. All right, so this was the rat's nest of wiring that was underneath my seat. Yeah, this is terrible. I'm not great at wiring. One of the biggest problems with the Track is that because it uses an Ethernet connector, you end up getting these really tiny wires, and they're a pain in the butt to work with. So it's nice that on the Pro unit we've got that big connector, and we're going to end up working with bigger wires, and we essentially don't have to work with any of the Ethernet stuff. Right, with the Track, the Ethernet cable is providing power, ground, and access to the 2 CAN networks. On the Pro, while we do have the option to use an Ethernet cable, we have that big connector. So we just don't have to mess with these super tiny gauge wires. Right now, what I'm going to do is figure out which wire is what, because that's obviously a problem. And there's a rat's nest of wires underneath here as well, and that's sort of why this whole thing's happening. I've got to rewire this and cut up some slack on the wire here. But the goal is to run it somewhere up in the dash, over and down into that footwell. And I believe this panel comes off, which will give us a lot of accessibility into wiring up the Pro. So I'm going to work on taking this apart, labeling everything so I know what they're for, and then slowly, cutting up all the slack that's in the wiring right now, and then moving it over to that center console. Okay, so that wasn't too bad. The rat's nest has been removed and all the wires have been labeled. So I've got analog 1, analog 2, ground, power, CAN high, CAN low, and there's quite a bit of wire here. I think it'll be more than enough to get across. We'll see here. I actually think there's a little extra in here. Now there's a bunch of slack wire, extra wire from the gauges up here running down here that are a mess up in here. So I'm gonna untangle that there and either cut the wires or straighten them out or figure something out. And once this section is neat, then figure out a routing or how to route or routing path over to the front of that center console. The last thing we'll work on is this. This is the cable being used for the Shift X. So these tiny wires are a total pain in the butt. We'll see how that goes. We'll figure that out later. That'll be a later problem. But for now, I'm gonna work on the rat's nest that's in there. Okay, so rat's nest under here has been taken care of. The wiring has been straightened out, and I used some hose sheathing or something. I don't know what it is. It's something I had that laying around. I figured I might as well use it. Probably too thick too, but it's good because I didn't have to take the connectors off. What I'm going to do is there's actually a bar that runs across deep or further up in the dash, and there's definitely some cabling that runs across as well. So I'm going to zip tie everything up there and then try to tuck it into that panel, into that the front of the center console over there. Hopefully I don't have to take this panel off because I'm lazy, but we'll find out. So let me zip tie all this stuff here, and then chances are I can't get the camera to record that, so I'll take a photo and post it up on the screen. So hopefully the next time we cut back, all of this will be up in there and sticking out in that center console area. All right, so everything is routed, and that was actually a lot easier than I thought it would be. The wires are here. So this is everything that will go into that connector that's on the back of the Pro. And there's a little bit of excess cabling here, but I think we've got some space to kind of tuck stuff away. And then this is the Ethernet cable for the ShiftX display, which we still have to crimp. But the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I've got the proper wires tapped into the connector for the Pro, wire everything up, and just make sure that it turns on. And then maybe I'll even load over the configuration file that I had on the track unit into the Pro unit and just make sure my analog gauges are inputting correctly, or at least getting the correct signal, or at least a signal. So we'll do that really quick. Once that's done, we'll clean up the wiring, finish up the ShiftX connector, and then put all the trim pieces back. Okay, so everything is wired up, and I've loaded the data logger, the data logger with the right configuration file for the WRX. And so if I turn this on, data logger powers on, it says it's connected to the CAN bus, and I should turn the steering wheel and you should see some stuff move here if I step on the throttle. And I think it's working good. So now that that's done, I'm going to work on crimping the right connection for the ShiftX on the dash, plugging that in, and then after that we're done. Just reassemble everything and we're good to go. I do have a little bit of like slack in the wires there, but I think there's space where I can just kind of tuck it away because I'm way too lazy to cut it. Otherwise, I think that's it. So let me go ahead and crimp that connector here real quick, and we should be good to go. Okay, so quick update here. Realize that if I crimped the Ethernet connector to the Ethernet cable and plugged it in, I think that connector on the Pro is designed to take like a power in, not put a power out. So instead I just ended up connecting the power ground to the same posi taps that were coming off the big connector, and then wired in to posi taps that were for CAN 2 on the big connector. So I'm not using the Ethernet connector at all. And I could use that in the future for like an OBD port type of connector if I so wish, but I probably won't. I had a little bit of problem with the ShiftX. So the scripts that I were running weren't running commands to the ShiftX for some reason, and I thought I had a wiring issue and chased that for like half an hour, and then realized that the script was throwing out some like error codes, some really weird error codes, and I know that this script works because I previously had used it. Turns out the Pro was running a really old version of firmware, and at some point the firmware was updated to bring it up to date to run ShiftX. So updated the firmware, and boom, ShiftX is working. You can see the demo script running right there. So everything should be good. All that's left is to clean up the wiring and tuck everything away, and we're done. All right, everything's been buttoned up and tucked away. Looks good. The GPS antenna actually runs out the side and goes into the glove box, so when we get to the track we can take it out, mount it on the car. Data logger is snug and everything's working over there. And our ShiftX is blinking away on the demo script. I'll go back and load the proper configuration for the WRX in there. And then all the warning lights and the shift lights will come up. But that is it. So that was pretty cool. Happy everything worked out. Didn't really take that long. And hopefully in the next video we'll be doing something with a radiator here. So I've been exchanging emails with Ron Davis here. I've been giving him some dimensions. Hopefully it's helping him out develop a radiator for the car. And hopefully in the next couple months we'll get that together and hit the track. So until then, thank you very much as always for watching. If you have any questions or concerns or whatever it may be, put them in the comments section, and we'll see you at the next video. Take care, guys.